White heavy checkmark disclaimer. This story is a fictionalized paranormal account inspired by the idea of a celebrity's real-life haunting. It is purely for entertainment purposes. The events described, including the haunting of Kelly Clarkson's house, are not verified, and any resemblance to real people or events is entirely coincidental. This story does not intend to harm, defame, or misrepresent any individual or entity. Listener discretion is advised, especially for those sensitive to supernatural themes. It was supposed to be a new chapter, a fresh beginning after a long, public divorce and years of stress under the spotlight. In the spring of 2021, Kelly Clarkson purchased a sprawling estate on the outskirts of Nashville, Tennessee. The mansion stood proudly on 6 acres of private land, its Victorian structure restored to modern standards, but with all the charm of a bygone era. High archways, creaky wooden floors, ornate staircases, and antique fireplaces gave the house a timeless elegance that Kelly fell in love with the moment she walked in. The purchase went smoothly. Almost too smoothly. The real estate agent seemed oddly eager to close the deal, brushing off questions about the home's history. When Kelly asked about previous owners, the answers were vague, just a few folks over the decades, the agent had said with a nervous smile. Kelly, focused on turning a new page for herself and her 2 children, didn't press further. She moved in during the summer, just as the southern heat was starting to reach its peak. The kids were excited to explore the big backyard and the many rooms inside the house. Kelly took joy in designing every inch, bringing in her favorite colors, furniture, and vintage finds. Despite the grandeur, she wanted it to feel like home, a place where she and her family could feel safe, loved, and free from judgment. But not long after they settled in, Kelly noticed something strange. It started with the neighbors. A few of them, mostly older folks who had lived in the area for decades, seemed surprised, almost unsettled, to hear she had bought that house. One woman across the road, while dropping off a welcome basket, let slip, "It's been empty for a reason." When Kelly pressed her, she just shook her head and muttered, "Some houses hold on to things." Brushing it off as small-town gossip, Kelly focused on her career and children. She was hosting The Kelly Clarkson Show remotely at the time, enjoying the balance between work and family in her new sanctuary. Yet, late at night, when the laughter of the day faded, the house didn't feel as peaceful. Sometimes she'd hear what sounded like footsteps above her bedroom, only to find her children fast asleep in their beds. Other times, she'd feel a sudden chill rush through the hallway, despite the heat outside. One day, as she was organizing the attic, she found an old photograph tucked into the back of a dresser drawer. It was a black and white picture, faded and wrinkled. In it stood a little boy no older than 7, wearing suspenders and holding a toy truck. Behind him was the unmistakable staircase of her new home. Kelly was puzzled. The photo had no writing, no date. She kept it anyway, tucking it into a box of old family keepsakes. As the days went on, her young daughter began to act differently. She talked about an imaginary friend named Eli who played with her in the hall and made funny faces when she brushed her teeth. At first, Kelly found it charming. Children often invented friends when adjusting to a new place. But Eli's presence became increasingly unsettling. Her daughter once refused to enter her room, saying, "Eli doesn't want me to sleep there tonight." Another time, she claimed Eli said he used to live in the house a long time ago, but nobody ever came back for him. Kelly tried to rationalize it all. Maybe it was just the stress of everything, the move, the divorce, the new routines. But in quiet moments, a heaviness lingered in the air. As a mother, she couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen had entered their lives, something that didn't want to leave. The house was beautiful, yes. But beneath the beauty was something else. Something watching, waiting. And whatever it was, Kelly was starting to believe that her dream home came with more than just hardwood floors and antique charm. It came with a story. A ghost story. In the weeks that followed, Kelly Clarkson's picture-perfect life inside her new mansion began to fray at the edges. What began as harmless oddities soon formed a disturbing pattern, one that no amount of logic or reason could explain away. It started with the sound of footsteps. At first, Kelly assumed they were her kids running around upstairs, but each time she checked, she'd find them either fast asleep or sitting quietly, nowhere near the areas where the sounds originated. The footsteps always came late at night, echoing lightly through the halls, as if a barefoot child was wandering aimlessly. Once, as she was brushing her teeth, she heard a faint giggle behind her. She turned quickly, heart racing, but there was no one there. The atmosphere in the house began to shift. Rooms would suddenly become ice cold, despite the southern summer heat. The living room, in particular, had a persistent chill in one corner by the fireplace. At first, she assumed the air conditioning was acting up, but when HVAC technicians came to check it out, they found nothing wrong. "It's weird," one of them muttered, scratching his head. "This whole room is one temperature, except right here." He pointed to the icy corner. "It drops like 10 degrees in this one spot." Soon, lights began flickering without warning. Bulbs that had just been changed would dim or surge with no electrical issues found. Her daughter's nightlight would turn off at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night without fail. Kelly tried replacing it, changing outlets, even setting timers. Nothing worked. That light would die the same time each night, and when it did, her daughter would wake up screaming, always saying the same thing: "He's here." Toys started appearing in odd places. A small wooden truck that didn't belong to her kids appeared on the staircase. A red rubber ball rolled down the hallway when no one was there to throw it. The strangest of all was an old music box that played by itself, slow, off-key lullabies that would fill the air when the house was quiet. Kelly didn't even own a music box. One night, she followed the sound to the upstairs guest bedroom, and sitting on the windowsill was a rusted, brass music box that she swore hadn't been there before. When she opened it, the haunting melody stopped abruptly, as if something new had been discovered. Her daughter continued to talk about Eli. She described him in alarming detail, a small boy with dark eyes, messy hair, and sad clothes. She said he liked to play hide and seek, but got angry when he lost. One day, Kelly found crayon drawings taped to her daughter's wall. Each one showed a little boy with black circles for eyes, standing beside a girl that looked just like her daughter. In one picture, the boy was frowning, and above him were the words, "I'm still here." The family dog, a golden retriever named Baxter, began acting strangely. He would growl at empty doorways, refuse to enter the upstairs hallway, and sometimes bark at the closet in the guest bedroom. Once, in the middle of the night, Kelly was jolted awake by Baxter snarling and scratching violently at the bedroom door, as if trying to keep something out. Even guests began to notice. A close friend who came to visit asked, "Is this house haunted or something?" She said she'd felt someone tug her shirt while walking through the hallway, only to turn and find no one there. A studio technician who came to set up Kelly's remote filming gear refused to go into the attic, claiming it felt wrong up there. The incidents mounted, and Kelly's nerves frayed. She tried ignoring it, tried to rationalize it all as stress, overactive imagination, or harmless quirks of an old house. But deep down, something told her it wasn't just the house, it was the presence in the house. Something unseen, but deeply aware. Something that wasn't just playing games, it was trying to be seen. As much as she didn't want to admit it, Kelly knew she was no longer alone in her home. She wasn't just dealing with a haunting, she was being drawn into a child's unfinished story. And Eli, whoever or whatever he was, had no intention of being forgotten. Kelly Clarkson had always believed in the possibility of something greater, of energies, intuition, and the unseen, but she had never truly felt it until now. The haunting wasn't just limited to the physical world anymore. It had begun to seep into her subconscious, invading her dreams with a chilling clarity that shook her to her core. The first dream came one night after she'd spent hours trying to soothe her daughter, who had once again woken up screaming. Kelly fell asleep on the couch, exhausted, and found herself inside her own house, but everything was tinted blue and silent. In the dream, she walked slowly up the staircase, drawn toward a faint, muffled crying. At the top, sitting alone in the hallway, was a young boy with his knees pulled to his chest. His clothes were old-fashioned, his skin pale, and he looked up at her with wide, glassy eyes. He whispered, "Don't leave me here," before vanishing into the floorboards. She woke up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. It was just a dream, she told herself. A reaction to stress, maybe from her daughter's disturbing bedtime stories. But that explanation faded quickly when the dreams repeated, each time becoming more vivid, more personal. One night, she found herself locked in the guest bedroom closet, the same one her daughter had been afraid of. She could hear scratching on the inside of the door and a child's voice crying, "Please don't forget me. I'm still here." The next morning, Kelly found deep scratch marks inside that very closet, etched into the wood in small, childlike patterns. She knew they hadn't been there before. Her sleep deteriorated rapidly. She'd fall into bed exhausted but wake up multiple times, always at the same hour, 3:15 a.m., the same time her daughter's night light died each night. In one terrifying instance, she opened her eyes and saw a small figure standing at the foot of her bed. A boy. Still. Silent. Watching. When she blinked, he was gone, but the air was thick with the scent of something old, dust, wood, and a faint metallic tang like blood. Her daughter became increasingly withdrawn. She stopped playing in her room and would often sit quietly by the window, staring into the garden. "Eli is sad," she whispered one morning. "He says you don't believe him." Kelly tried to comfort her, saying Eli wasn't real, just a story her imagination created. But her daughter only looked at her with solemn eyes and said, "He's real. And he's angry now." The family dog, Baxter, began sleeping outside Kelly's bedroom door, refusing to leave her side. He whined constantly, especially when Kelly approached the guest bedroom or the attic. One night, she found him barking at the top of the stairs, teeth bared, as if warning her not to come up. She looked behind her but saw only shadows dancing across the walls, shadows with no source. Even during the day, Kelly started seeing things out of the corner of her eye. A small shape darting down the hallway. A flash of movement in the mirror. Once, while rehearsing a song at her grand piano, she felt a small cold hand brush her back. She turned, startled, and saw nothing. But her skin tingled for hours after, and she couldn't shake the sensation that someone had been standing behind her, listening. She began journaling the events, hoping to make sense of the timeline, when it all began, when the energy changed. And the pattern was clear. The haunting started the moment her daughter mentioned Eli. Whatever this entity was, it had attached itself to her child first, maybe because children are more open, more trusting of the unexplained. Kelly feared that in trying to protect her family from emotional turmoil, she had overlooked the very real danger growing under her roof. In a moment of desperation, she took out the old photo she found in the attic weeks ago, the boy in suspenders holding a toy truck. She stared at it, whispering, "Eli? Is this you?" The room grew cold, and a faint sound reached her ears, a distant hum, like a lullaby. Her daughter walked in silently, looked at the photo, and said, "That's him. That's Eli." For the first time, Kelly fully accepted it. She wasn't imagining things. Her home was haunted by a child, lonely, restless, and crying out from beyond the veil. And now that she'd acknowledged him, the real haunting was about to begin. Now certain that something truly paranormal was unfolding within her home, Kelly Clarkson could no longer chalk things up to stress or coincidence. The visions, the cold spots, the unexplained scratches, they were all pointing to something deeper, something buried. And if her daughter's continued conversations with Eli weren't enough, the house itself seemed to whisper fragments of its past in silence, daring her to look closer. One quiet morning, after a particularly sleepless night, Kelly sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and began digging into the house's history. She searched public records, local forums, property archives, anything that could tell her who lived there before. The house, she learned, was built in 1908, originally owned by a wealthy tobacco merchant and his wife. Over the decades, it passed through many hands, often staying empty for years at a time. There were gaps in the ownership records, mysterious sales that seemed rushed or concealed. More than once, former owners had moved out abruptly, leaving little trace behind. Still, there was nothing concrete, no story that explained the presence of a spirit, let alone a child. Frustrated but determined, Kelly contacted a local historian named Martha Green, who specialized in Tennessee's forgotten estates. Martha was intrigued by the request, especially when Kelly offered to meet in person at the mansion. When Martha arrived, she immediately commented on the odd wait she felt upon entering the foyer. As she walked through the house, her demeanor shifted from curious to deeply unsettled. "This place is old," she said softly, "but it's not just age I feel. It's sorrow." Kelly led her to the guest bedroom, the heart of the disturbances. Martha stood in the room silently for several moments, then asked to see the attic. Together, they climbed the narrow steps and reached the dusty space where Kelly had found the old photograph. Martha examined the photo carefully. "I've seen this boy before," she murmured. "In newspaper archives. His name was Elijah Harper. Everyone called him Eli." Heart-pounding, Kelly listened as Martha explained. In 1954, the mansion had been a foster home run by a local church. It was short-lived, closed down after a string of mysterious incidents and a tragic death. Eli, a 7-year-old orphan, had gone missing inside the house. For weeks, no one knew where he'd gone. It was only after neighbors reported a foul odor that his body was discovered, locked inside a narrow storage closet in the guest bedroom. The official report claimed it was an accident. Eli had been playing hide-and-seek and accidentally trapped himself. But local whispers told a different story. There were rumors of abuse, of a cruel caretaker known to punish children by locking them away. Some believed Eli had cried for help for days, unheard and ignored, until he eventually perished. The caretaker was questioned but never charged. The church dissolved the program quietly, and the house was sold at a reduced price to cover up the scandal. Kelly felt sick to her stomach. Everything made a terrible kind of sense now. Eli wasn't just a restless ghost. He was a forgotten child whose final days were spent in terror and abandonment. The pain etched into the very bones of the house was his pain. His cries weren't echoes, they were pleas for someone to finally listen. "I think he's trapped," Martha said, her voice low. "Not just spiritually, but emotionally. He died afraid, alone, and invisible. And now he's reaching out to anyone who might see him." Kelly's hands trembled as she held the old photo. That same face, the same sad eyes, had haunted her dreams, her daughter's drawings, her hallway mirrors. The pieces were fitting together, but the picture was anything but comforting. Before leaving, Martha gave her a piece of advice. Spirits like Eli don't always want to harm. Sometimes they just want to be acknowledged, to be mourned, to be loved. If you want peace in this house, you may have to give him the closure he never got. That night, Kelly sat alone in the guest bedroom, staring at the closed closet door. The air felt heavy, but not angry, just desperate. She whispered, "I know who you are now, Eli. I'm sorry. I should have listened sooner." And for the first time, the silence that followed felt like a response. Like someone had heard her. After learning the dark history behind her home and the tragic fate of Elijah Harper, Kelly Clarkson knew she couldn't face this alone. Whatever haunted the house, whoever Eli was now, he was more than just a memory. His presence was active, emotional, and powerful. Her daughter was becoming increasingly withdrawn, the dog was constantly anxious, and the nightly disturbances had turned into something darker. Shadows moved more aggressively. Lights flickered even in the middle of the day. The music box played without winding. A sense of dread hung in the air like thick smoke. Kelly reached out to a trusted friend in the entertainment world who had previously spoken about paranormal experiences. That friend recommended a well-known paranormal investigation team, the Nashville Paranormal Collective, known for their respectful but thorough work. The team consisted of a lead investigator named Marcus, a psychic medium named Danny, and 2 tech experts with advanced detection equipment. They arrived late one evening just before sunset. With Kelly's permission, they set up EMF detectors, thermal imaging cameras, motion sensors, and audio recorders throughout the home. Danny, the medium, immediately reacted upon entering the house. Her eyes welled up as she stepped into the foyer. "There's a child here," she said quietly. "He's confused. He doesn't know he's dead. And he's very, very scared." The team began their investigation in the guest bedroom, where most of the activity seemed centered. EMF detectors spiked near the closet almost instantly, even with all electronics turned off. One of the cameras picked up sudden, unexplained cold spots moving along the walls. A thermal image captured what looked like a small handprint on the inside of the closet door, despite no one having touched it. During an EVP electronic voice phenomenon session, Marcus asked, "Is someone here with us?" A static-filled silence followed. Then a faint child's voice played back, "It's dark in here." Everyone froze. Kelly stood outside the room, arms crossed tightly, trying to steady her breath. She wasn't afraid for herself anymore. She was afraid for Eli. What if his soul had been trapped in this house for decades, reliving the same fear over and over again? Later, in the attic, the team captured a chilling sequence of events. One of the tech experts was setting up a motion-triggered camera when something pushed him lightly at first, then with enough force that he stumbled. "It felt like a kid pushing me, like he didn't want me here," he said, shaken. The camera still caught a fast blur of movement in the corner, too small to be an adult, but unmistakably human in shape. Danny suggested holding a short seance, not to banish the spirit, but to reach out and communicate directly. Kelly hesitated, but ultimately agreed. They gathered in the guest bedroom. The lights were turned off. Candles flickered on the dresser. The room was deathly quiet. Danny closed her eyes and spoke softly. "Eli, we're here to help you. We know what happened. You don't have to be afraid anymore." The candle flames trembled. The air dropped 10 degrees. Then, Danny began to cry, not out of fear, but from overwhelming sadness. "He says no one ever came. He says he waited. He says he cried and cried, but no one came." The room filled with a thick wave of emotion, hitting Kelly like a punch to the chest. Her own tears spilled as she whispered, "I'm here now. I hear you, Eli. I promise." Suddenly, one of the EMF meters exploded with light, beeping wildly. The closet door creaked open on its own. The team sat in stunned silence. It was the clearest sign of a response they'd ever seen. Eli wasn't angry. He wasn't evil. He was just lost. And finally, someone had heard him. As the investigation wrapped up, Marcus pulled Kelly aside. "He's attached to this place, but not in a harmful way. He just needs peace. Sometimes spirits linger because they've never been acknowledged. You're the first person to see him, not just the ghost, but the boy. That matters more than you realize." That night, the house was quiet. For the first time in weeks, Kelly's daughter slept through the night. Baxter didn't growl or bark. And in the silence, Kelly felt something lift, like the air itself had taken a breath and finally exhaled. But one thing was clear, Eli wasn't gone yet. He had more to say. In the days following the paranormal investigation, the house felt calmer, lighter, even. But that calm proved to be short-lived. Though the nightly disturbances had quieted and the oppressive atmosphere had somewhat lifted, something else began to take its place, something subtler, but far more chilling. It centered around the guest bedroom closet, the same place where Elijah Harper's body had allegedly been found decades ago. That small, ordinary space now pulsed with a presence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Kelly Clarkson tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. She continued filming her talk show remotely and spending time with her children, but there was a constant, nagging anxiety in her chest. She would catch herself glancing toward that hallway, where the guest room door remained closed, and feel her stomach twist in anticipation. She told herself not to be afraid. After all, the paranormal team had said Eli wasn't malicious. But what was unfolding now didn't feel like a lost child. It felt like something darker. Her daughter, who had shown signs of improvement after the investigation, began regressing rapidly. She no longer spoke of Eli in the playful, innocent way she once had. Now, she referred to him with dread. "He doesn't want me to talk to you anymore," she whispered one afternoon. "He says he lied. He says no one ever helps." That night, Kelly heard muffled voices coming from her daughter's room. She pushed open the door and found her sitting on the floor, her eyes wide and unfocused, speaking in a soft, unfamiliar voice. "Don't close the door. Don't leave me again. I was good. I was good." Kelly knelt beside her, shaking her gently. "Sweetheart, wake up." Her daughter blinked, confused, and began to cry. "He said I had to stay there. In the dark. Just like he did." Kelly's blood ran cold. The next morning, she found her daughter inside the closet in the guest bedroom, the same closet where Eli had died. She was curled up in the corner, her small arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes were distant, and her lips moved slightly, as though whispering to someone only she could see. The door hadn't been locked, but she hadn't called out, hadn't cried for help. It was as if she had gone there willingly, as if something had called her. Kelly pulled her out, trembling. "Why did you go in there?" "He needed me," her daughter replied. "He said I remind him of his sister. He misses her." Desperate for answers, Kelly contacted Danny, the psychic medium from the investigation. Danny returned the same evening, visibly disturbed when she stepped inside. She didn't need to be told what had happened. "He's become more present," she said. "The recognition, the energy, it's made him stronger. He's not evil, but his pain is powerful. And it's consuming everything." They returned to the guest room. As Danny stood before the closet, she gasped. "He's inside. Not just in spirit. His memory. His trauma. It's locked in this space." Kelly stood frozen, watching as Danny gently opened the closet door. Inside, it was ice cold. A child's voice whispered through the room, barely audible. "Don't shut me in again." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the closet door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The temperature dropped instantly. Kelly rushed to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Danny held her hand to the wood, closing her eyes. "He's reliving it. Every night. Over and over again." Kelly's heart broke. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a loop, an echo of a child's fear and confusion, so intense that it had imprinted itself into the very bones of the house. Eli wasn't possessing people, he was possessed by his own suffering. Together, they pried the door open. The room immediately warmed. Danny turned to Kelly, her expression solemn. "He needs closure. He needs love. He needs to know someone cares, that someone finally sees him." That night, Kelly kept her daughter in her own bed, holding her close. She placed the photograph of Eli on the nightstand and lit a small candle beside it. She whispered softly, "You don't need to hide anymore, Eli. You're not alone. You're safe now." Outside, the wind stirred gently through the trees, and for the first time in weeks, the music box didn't play. The house was quiet, but this time, the quiet didn't feel like fear. It felt like listening. By now, Kelly Clarkson knew that her home was more than haunted, it was holding onto the spirit of a child consumed by sorrow. Elijah Harper, or Eli, hadn't just died tragically, he had died forgotten. Locked in the closet of that guest bedroom, calling for someone who never came, never cared. And somehow his small voice had reached across decades, finally touching someone willing to listen. But something needed to change. This couldn't go on. After consulting again with Danny, the psychic medium, Kelly decided on a bold step, to confront the spirit directly, not with fear, but with compassion. The goal wasn't to exorcise him, but to help him move on. According to Danny, spirits like Eli weren't bound by hatred or vengeance, but by unresolved pain. What he needed most wasn't cleansing or rituals, it was recognition. Closure. A moment that could offer him peace. They chose a quiet Sunday evening, just before sundown. The house was calm. Kelly had sent her daughter to stay with a close friend, wanting to protect her from anything that might unfold. She sat alone in the guest bedroom, the closet door open, the small photograph of Eli resting on her lap. A candle burned on the dresser beside her. The air was still. Kelly took a deep breath and began to speak, not loudly, not formally, but gently, like a mother telling a bedtime story. "Hi, Eli. I know you're here. I know you've been here for a very long time. I've felt you. I've seen you. And I want you to know I hear you now." She paused, letting the silence settle. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. No one deserves to be left like that. No one should have to die feeling unloved or unseen. You didn't deserve it, Eli. You were just a little boy. The candle flame flickered once. A cold wind brushed across her arms. She didn't stop. I know you're scared. I know you waited a long time for someone to come. And I hate that no one did. But I'm here now. I see you. I care. And I want you to be free. Her voice wavered slightly as emotion rose in her chest. The thought of a child frightened, alone, with no comfort in his final moments, was too much. Kelly stood up slowly and walked toward the piano that had been brought into the hallway for her remote shows. Sitting down, she ran her fingers gently across the keys, then began to play a soft, simple lullaby. One she had written herself, a melody meant to calm, to comfort, to let go. It wasn't grand. It wasn't even meant for an audience. It was just for him. As the melody filled the house, something changed. The lights dimmed, not from flickering, but from a quiet stillness. The air no longer felt cold. It felt warm, like sunlight after a storm. Kelly continued to play, tears sliding down her cheeks, letting the music carry the emotion she couldn't fully speak aloud. Behind her, the closet door creaked once. And then, from deep within the silence, she heard it, a whisper. Faint. Barely there. But unmistakable. Thank you. She froze, her fingers resting on the keys. The warmth intensified, then faded like a breeze through an open window. A moment later, the candle beside the photograph extinguished itself gently, as if someone had blown it out. Danny entered the room moments later. Her face was pale, but calm. He's gone, she whispered. He heard you. He let go. Kelly didn't say anything at first. She sat there, letting the last note of the lullaby echo in her mind. Then, finally, she nodded. Tears still in her eyes, she whispered back, "You're free now, Eli." The heaviness that had plagued the house for weeks, the chill, the fear, the unease, had lifted. The energy of the space had changed. Eli, the forgotten boy, had finally been seen. Finally been loved. The change in the house was immediate, subtle at first, but unmistakable. The shadows no longer clung to the corners. The air no longer carried that sharp chill. And for the first time since she had moved in, Kelly Clarkson felt like the house was truly hers. It was as though the mansion, once weighed down by a long-forgotten sorrow, had exhaled, letting go of a burden it had held for over 60 years. Her daughter was the first to notice. The morning after the confrontation, she woke up with a smile, stretched out in bed, and said, "It's quiet now." Eli's gone to find his mommy. Kelly wrapped her in a tight hug, her heart heavy and light at the same time. There was no more talk of imaginary friends, no more drawings of a sad boy with dark eyes. Just laughter, dancing, and the happy chaos of childhood returning. Baxter, their golden retriever, also changed. Once anxious and wary, he now slept soundly and walked freely through the halls he used to avoid. He even napped beside the guest bedroom door, a place he once barked at and refused to approach. It was as if he, too, understood that the sadness had passed, that Eli had found peace. Kelly kept her promise. She didn't try to bury the experience or forget it. Instead, she chose to honor it. In the garden, under the large oak tree near the back of the property, she placed a small engraved stone, "Elijah Harper, you are seen. You are loved. Rest now." She didn't hold a public memorial, didn't post anything about it on social media. It was private. Quiet. Just her children, and the truth. The world knew her as a singer, a talk show host, a celebrity. But in this moment, she was simply a mother who had comforted a child, one who had waited far too long for someone to listen. In the following weeks, Kelly began to feel more connected to the house than ever before. It no longer felt like a structure she had bought, it felt like a home that had chosen her for a purpose. The guest bedroom, once closed off and avoided, was transformed into a reading room. Sunlight streamed through its windows, the closet door now always open. She placed a soft chair near the window and added a bookshelf filled with her children's favorite stories. Sometimes, She'd sit there in the afternoon, just enjoying the silence. But it was a different kind of silence now. A peaceful one. There were no more dreams, no more whispers in the night, no more flickering lights or phantom footsteps. But every now and then, on quiet mornings or just before dusk, Kelly felt a presence. A warmth. Not unsettling, but familiar. As if someone was stopping by, just to say hello. She would smile and whisper, "You're welcome here, Eli. But you don't have to stay." In interviews, when asked about her new home, Kelly would often smile thoughtfully and say, "It's special. It taught me more than I ever expected." When asked if she ever got lonely in such a big place, she'd chuckle and say no. Not anymore. Some stories she kept for herself. Some truths were too sacred to share with cameras and microphones. The world didn't need to know every detail. What mattered was that Eli had been found, that his story had been heard, and that a forgotten child had finally found the peace he'd been denied for so long. Kelly went on with her life, recording music, raising her children, and hosting her show, but the experience stayed with her. Not as a nightmare, but as a quiet reminder that healing sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. That sometimes, ghosts don't need to be chased away, they need to be understood. And in the house on the edge of Nashville, the music played once more. But this time, it was laughter, lullabies, and love that echoed through the halls. Eli was gone, but he would never be forgotten. 68.